Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to another episode of Pounds and Inches. This is Ryan. I'm Bethany, and today we're going to be talking to you about Lanterns Dice. But before we do, disclaimer. We are in America. It is the first week of July. All that means is there's a lot of special effects going on outside right now that we cannot prevent.
You're just talking about fireworks, and the good news is there's actually fireworks in Lanterns Dice, which we'll get to, but just consider it like a soundtrack to the review, and then you'll be fine.
All right, so now we got that out of the way. We can talk about what we talk about. Before we talk about the game, we like to give you updates of what's happening with us health-wise. It's just a way for us to, keep accountable with this, and then we also hope that everything we say is encouraging, and we also are very encouraged when you guys comment on anything that we post. It's just, I don't know, I like that kind of community there.
Yeah.
So my exciting thing for this week is that I did a push-up, like a real push-up. It wasn't a modified push-up. I'm talking, I started up, my back was flat, I went down, I prayed to God above, and I went back up. And I did not try to do it twice. I was very excited about that one push-up.
Well, there you go. Con season is upon us. There's probably some of you have already been to some conventions. I just got an email from Gen Con that reminded me to make sure I had some comfortable worn-in shoes before Gen Con, because you are on your feet a lot. And that reminded me that I need to go and get some new inserts for my shoes. I have flattened arches already. It's just really important that I have good supportive shoes and inserts. So I encouragement to all of you guys out there, if you spend any amount of time on your feet in order to keep that foot health up, make sure you get some good shoes, good arches, all that kind of stuff, whether you go to conventions or not. If you just spend time on your feet, take care of them.
All right, so enough about that. Let's talk about Lanterns Dice. How does this game play?
All right, so there is a sibling, an older sibling of this game called Lanterns, which we reviewed in a previous episode. Feel free to go back and check that out. But also, this is a dice version of that game. So on your turn, you're going to basically rolling dice that you're going to able to shade some stuff in on a player board that you have, get some points, pass it around. You're going to play a certain amount of rounds based off of how many players you have. And then at the end of the game, the most points wins. So let's see what some of the options that you have are. So on your turn, you're going to take the dice, you're going to roll them in this little dice tray, kind of roll them around until they're all flat. And you get to orient this however you want, so that whatever's facing you, you get to shade on your little board that color. So in this, for instance, I've got red pointed at me. The person across me would get yellow. The person to my right would get green. The person to my left would get blue. And we'd all get to shade that color in. In addition, because I'm the active player, I get an additional thing to shade in. In this case, it's red. So I would be able to shade a red and a red somewhere on this board. So you've got kind of a lot of options here what you can shade in. There's just regular spots that do nothing for you. It's just a regular red triangle. Right next to it here, we've got this little square thing called a platform. When you fill in both halves, the blue and the green in this case, you get to fill in one adjacent spot, up, down, or left, or right. That's an extra way to kind of fill in some spots. You also have these little circles, which are called gifts. You fill in those gifts down here, and then you're able to spend those gifts on these cards at the top. Those give you some additional abilities and some ways you can shade in some things that you wouldn't have normally been able to shade in. Lastly on the board, you have these boats. And if you can shade in the top, bottom, left, and right, both parts of the square, you get some additional points at the end of the game. So in addition to getting all those things, you also have these fireworks tiles. If you shade in an area that has of the picture match that you're using that game, you can put that on your board, covering up that shape. At the end of the game, you get those points based off the tile. All right, so at the end of the game, you're going to score all of your fireworks tiles. You're going to score your second biggest space. So you have, as you're shading in, maybe let's say you have one big space that has 10 spots in it. Then over here, you have another spot that has 7 spots in it. So you wouldn't get the 10 points, but you would get the 7 points for having 7 squares filled in, all connected. It kind of encourages diversification. And then lastly, you get 4 points for boat that's surrounded top, bottom, left, and right. Add that all up, and that is your final score. All right, so what are some of the things that you like about Lanterns dice?
One of the things that I enjoyed were the fireworks tiles. Every game there's 4 different shapes, but overall in the entire box there's 8 different shapes. So I like the variety that having these different fireworks tiles give you. And then also they give you something to work towards. If you don't know what you're doing, you know that you can at least try to get that shape.
When I play a dice game, what I'm looking for is some control, some way to mitigate that luck. And those gifts and those gift cards allow me to have some of the extra control, allows me to fill in some spots that that might complete a shape or allow me to score some points. So I like that those gifts give me that extra ability to control my fate.
I also like the dice container. You could simply roll dice and then just guess this is closest or whatever, or move it around. But I like that by putting it in the container, that goes to me, that goes to Ryan, that goes to player 3, that goes to player 4, and there's no, you can't like argue with that. And so I actually like this container and how it plays into the game.
We were able to teach this to our oldest daughter. She's 6, and this is something that she was able to pick up on her first playthrough. So it's something that's very accessible, and I was just very impressed with how how quick she was able to pick it up, and how the rule set just really kind of encouraged that.
I appreciate that they kept a lot of the original artwork, especially with the dice and then with the fireworks, and how the dice, the different colors, have the different symbols on them. And I appreciated that they were able to carry through with that into this game.
Yeah, so speaking of the artwork, in the original game of Lanterns, you had this kind of cool tiles that were growing on the board and had these really pretty colors. This game, you start with that, and then you actually cover them up with like these crappy pencil scratches. It kind of feels like a step backwards in terms of aesthetics.
Speaking of pencil scratches, this is a completed board. I'm sure Ryan will show you a picture later, but if you're thinking to yourself, that's a completed board, that's exactly my point. It is hard to look at other players' boards to figure out what they're doing and to try to play according to that. And it's not that big of a deal, but it would just be nice to have some control when you move the dice around, knowing what people are potentially headed for and what they're not headed for.
Yeah, and when I play a roll and write or a dice game, one of the things that I'm looking for is a fast turn. Unfortunately, in this game, you roll the dice, and then after that you have to figure out how to orient the thing, and no one can really plan ahead until they know which color they get to shade in. And then after that you have to take the time to figure out which blue am I going to shade in on this board, and what effects might that trigger. So the turns are a little longer than what I would expect for a dice game to be.
Yeah, and the end is a bit anticlimactic. What I mean by that is oftentimes, on my last roll, nothing happened. I'm able to color and shade things in, but it doesn't complete anything. I don't get anything special. It doesn't do anything for me. And that happened enough for me to not even care. Like, the last roll doesn't affect my overall score. And so that was a little, I don't know, a little disappointing.
Yeah, it kind of feels like you're going through the motions at that point. It just, I'm not sure how to change that, but it is what it is. All right, so what are your overall thoughts on Lanterns Dice?
All right, so this is a fine game. I know we've been like harshing on it a lot, but it's actually a pretty good game, and I like it. The only thing I really have to say about it is if this game were brought out and Lanterns were brought out, I would pick Lanterns every single time, hands down. This game would just never get played. But it's not a bad game. I think it has a place in some people's collection.
Yeah, this is a game that I think that if you like that spatial interaction that has that leg over the original Lanterns, you play those firework tiles and you kind of space them out, and I like that aspect of the game, as well as it's got a really broad appeal as far as you can play it with anybody of any age. It's going to have people that enjoy this game. So those are our thoughts on Lanterns Dice. So feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Pounds and Inches, to see all of our latest videos as they come out. We've also got a blog on BoardGameGeek.com. It's called Pounds and Inches as well. We talk a little bit more in depth about our health journey there. You can also check out our Twitter page, @RyanandBethany1 is our handle there. You can check us out on Facebook. Ryan and Bethany Board Game Reviews. Those are fun places to follow us and see what we're up to. And lastly, but not leastly, that's not a word. On Instagram, Bethany's page is BNFigs. She's always posting cool photos of board games there, so see what we're up to on all those places. And you can like, you can comment, you can subscribe. We love hearing from you guys, and we love talking back with you guys.
All right, well, this is Ryan and Bethany encouraging you to play games, live healthy, and create moments.
Bye, everybody.
Guys. When we're playing multiplayer, I don't know how else you would play.
There's not a solo mode. That was weird.
Let's just forget I said that. But
when you're playing the game,
yeah,
multiplayer as is the game, a multiplayer game.
When you're playing the game.